There are moments in your life when it feels like heaven has gone quiet, when your prayers seem to echo back at you, and nothing looks like it's shifting. But hear me when I say this, God does some of his greatest work in silence. When you think he's not speaking, he's strategizing. When you think he's not moving, he's positioning. When you think nothing is happening, everything is aligning. You're not being ignored. You're being prepared. Your breakthrough is not delayed. It's being developed. And I came to tell somebody today, don't you dare misinterpret the silence, because the silence is a sign that God is setting up something big in your life. When God goes silent, most people panic because they mistake quietness for abandonment. But silence is not the language of absence. It is often the language of strategy. There are seasons when God withdraws his obvious signs, his loud confirmations, his immediate answers, not to distance himself from you, but to deepen something within you. Sometimes he hides his hand so that he can shape your heart. Sometimes he steps back in sound so he can step forward in strategy. And when you don't hear him, it doesn't mean he's not speaking. It means he's speaking in a different dimension, a dimension your ears can't catch, but your spirit will eventually understand. God's silence does not come to torment you. It comes to train you. It teaches you to walk by faith when your senses want evidence. It cultivates trust that is not dependent on noise, signs, or goosebumps. Silence is where your spiritual muscles stretch. Silence is where your spirit learns to breathe without external oxygen. Silence is where God matures you enough to handle the blessing you've been praying for, because a premature blessing can feel like a burden. And some of the warfare you're feeling is not from the enemy. It's from the weight of what God is preparing you to carry. There are things you have asked God for that require a version of you that hasn't fully developed yet. So God stays quiet while he works on the areas of your character that your prayer request didn't mention. You prayed for elevation, but did you pray for the humility to handle criticism? You prayed for influence, but did you pray for the integrity to survive temptation? You prayed for love, but did you pray for healing so you won't sabotage the relationship when you finally get it? God's silence is his workshop. It's where he crafts the strength, stability, wisdom, and resilience necessary for the next phase of your life. When God is silent, he is studying the battlefield you can't see. He is observing the enemy you don't know is there. He is aligning resources, opening invisible doors, closing unseen traps, and orchestrating divine connections. He is calculating timing, because breakthrough is not only about what you receive, it's about when you receive it. A blessing delivered at the wrong time becomes a burden too heavy to bear, but a blessing delivered at the right time becomes breakthrough. That is why God's silence is strategic. It is timing, it is arrangement, it is heaven running operations behind the scenes while you stand on the stage of uncertainty wondering how the script will unfold. Think of a seed buried in the soil. It is surrounded by darkness. It hears nothing, sees nothing, feels nothing but pressure. To the untrained eye, it appears lifeless, motionless, forgotten. But underneath the soil, the seed is splitting open. Roots are pushing downward so the plant can rise upward. The darkness is not death, it's development. The pressure is not punishment, it's positioning. The silence surrounding the seed is not abandonment, it's incubation. God often treats you like that seed. He buries you in silence because he intends to raise you in power. He hides you in stillness because he plans to reveal you in purpose. But many people give up in the silent season because they misinterpret it. Silence feels like rejection when you don't understand the nature of divine preparation. You cry, God, why aren't you speaking? And God says, because I'm building. You cry, why can't I feel you? And he says, because I'm forming you. You cry, why isn't anything changing? And he answers, everything is changing, but not in the realm you're watching. Silence is where God does his best work, because silence keeps you still long enough for him to fix what movement keeps messing up. Think of a master sculptor. When he works on a masterpiece, the room becomes quiet. There is no applause, no music, no audience, only focus. The absence of sound doesn't mean the sculptor stopped working. It means his hands are doing something delicate, precise, intentional. The chiseling is quiet, but the transformation is massive. That is what God is doing with you. His silence is the chiseling you don't hear. His strategy is the shaping you don't see. His precision is the pressure you don't understand. Some of the breakthroughs God is preparing for you require silence so that distractions don't interfere. If God told you every detail, you'd tell the wrong people. If He revealed His plan too early, the enemy would attack prematurely. Silence is protection. Silence is consecration. God isolates you from unnecessary voices so that when He speaks again, you'll know it's Him. He removes noise so you'll stop leaning on your feelings and start depending on your faith. Silence turns your attention away from the external world and toward the internal one. It forces you to confront the fears, wounds, doubts, and insecurities that get in the way of your destiny. Silence is where God detoxes you from everything that cannot go with you into your breakthrough. And the powerful truth is this: while you think nothing is happening, God is orchestrating everything. While you're crying, He's planning. While you're confused, He's constructing. While you're waiting, He's weaving together the pieces of a miracle so intricately that when it manifests, you'll be overwhelmed by how perfectly it was timed and tailored just for you. That is why when the breakthrough finally comes, it doesn't slip into your life quietly. It enters with clarity, purpose, strength, and divine alignment. And suddenly the silence makes sense. The silence wasn't to punish you, it was to position you. It wasn't to weaken you, it was to prepare you. It wasn't to ignore you, it was to ensure that when the blessing comes, you can handle the weight of it, steward the responsibility of it, and protect the beauty of it. God's silence is a sign that He is up to something bigger than your understanding, deeper than your questions, and greater than your plans. So if you find yourself in a place where God seems quiet, don't panic. Don't assume He's distant. Don't assume He's forgotten you. The quietness is not the end of the conversation. It's the pregnant pause before the breakthrough. God speaks loudly when He announces a blessing, but He works silently while He prepares one. And right now, even if you can't feel Him, even if you can't hear Him, even if you can't trace His hand or sense His presence, trust this one truth: God's silence is not His absence, it's His strategy. Breakthrough never begins when you see it, feel it, or celebrate it. Breakthrough begins long before you recognize it. It starts in the invisible places, the places your eyes cannot detect and your emotions cannot interpret. We often think God moves when life shifts, but the truth is life shifts because God moved. Heaven starts building the answer before earth ever sees the evidence. And just because you can't see the construction doesn't mean the blueprint isn't already active. God specializes in background work. He specializes in quiet setups, unseen preparations, hidden alignments. Everything you're waiting for is already in motion behind the curtain of your current circumstances. Your breakthrough is not being born on the day it shows up. It is being shaped in silence long before it arrives. Sometimes God hides the progress so you don't sabotage the process. If you saw how close you were, you might rush ahead. If you saw how much He was building, you might broadcast it too soon. If you saw how deeply He was working, you might try to interfere with your own impatience. So instead of showing you the construction site, He simply tells you, wait. But while you're waiting, angels are coordinating, opportunities are forming, people are being positioned, and resources are being stirred up. You feel still, but heaven is moving. You feel delayed, but the appointed time is approaching. You feel uncertain, but God is absolutely clear on what He is doing. Just because your situation hasn't changed on the surface doesn't mean it isn't changing at the root. Breakthrough doesn't start with the fruit. It starts with the foundation. And God is a God of depth. He doesn't build cheap miracles or shallow blessings. He goes deep. He stabilizes. He strengthens. He establishes before He elevates. While you're wondering why the surface looks the same, God is digging up the old, healing hidden wounds, rerouting your steps, strengthening weak areas, and anchoring you so the blessing you receive won't collapse under pressure. The background is where God does His best work. Think of a theater production. Before the curtain rises and the actors step onto the stage, hundreds of things must be arranged. Costumes must be fitted, lights must be set, scripts must be rehearsed, props must be placed, scenes must be practiced. And while the audience sits in silence waiting for the first scene to begin, the entire production team is moving rapidly behind the curtain. They are adjusting, arranging, preparing, perfecting. The audience sees nothing. hears nothing, knows nothing, but everything is happening. That's what God is doing with your breakthrough. You're sitting in what feels like a long, quiet pause, but heaven is backstage aligning every detail. Sometimes your situation looks still because the work God is doing is internal, not external. Your mind is being renewed. Your faith is being strengthened. Your maturity is being stretched. Your discernment is being sharpened. Your dependence on God is being deepened. These are the invisible transformations that nobody can applaud because they can't see them. But they are the very transformations that qualify you for what you've been praying for. Before God gives you the blessing, He forms the person who can handle the blessing. Before He opens the door, He strengthens the one who will walk through it. The enemy's biggest lie is that nothing is happening. He wants you to confuse silence with stagnation. He wants you to think that if you can't feel God, God isn't moving. He wants you to believe that if you can't see progress, then progress doesn't exist. But the devil is a liar. Breakthrough often grows like a baby in the womb, fully alive, fully developing, fully growing, but completely hidden until the appointed time. The womb is not the absence of growth. It is the protection of growth. Your silent season is not lifeless. It is sheltered. The strange thing about breakthrough is that it always looks late until it arrives. Joseph spent years in prison, but his breakthrough was being groomed in Pharaoh's dreams. David spent years tending sheep, but his breakthrough was being woven into the battlefield. Ruth spent years grieving loss, but her breakthrough was walking toward Bethlehem. You may think time is being wasted, but God wastes nothing. Every moment of waiting is part of the construction. Every delay is part of divine timing. Every quiet night is part of the unseen blueprint of your future. Sometimes your breakthrough is waiting for you to outgrow what you've been settling for. God won't bring a king-sized calling into a mindset built for survival. He won't bring abundance into a heart still shaped by fear. He won't bring new relationships into an environment still ruled by old wounds. So He works behind the scenes, changing you, stretching you, healing you, untangling you. You're asking Him to change the blessing, but He's more interested in changing the one who will carry it. And while God works in the background, He often keeps you in environments that look unchanged because the unchanged environment forces the internal growth that is needed for the next level. Pressure makes you pray. Silence makes you listen. Delays make you seek Him more deeply. Discomfort makes you shift. God uses everything. Nothing is wasted. Every day of frustration, every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every lonely night, every quiet season, they all push you into the kind of growth that only pressure can produce. If God showed you everything He was doing, you would either not believe it or not be ready for it. Breakthrough on the surface is easy to celebrate, but breakthrough behind the scenes is harder to trust because you can't see it. But trust is not built on sight, it is built on surrender. And surrender is the language of those who know God does His greatest work invisibly before He reveals it visibly. One day, the background work will be finished. One day, the construction will be complete. And when it is, God will pull back the curtain and reveal what He's been preparing. Suddenly, doors will open with ease. Suddenly, answers will flow. Suddenly, connections will appear. Suddenly, opportunities will multiply. Suddenly, the season that felt frozen will burst into movement. And when it happens, you'll realize that your breakthrough didn't come out of nowhere. It came from everywhere God was working while you thought nothing was happening. Your breakthrough is not being delayed. It is being designed. It is not slow, it is strategic. God is working behind the scenes even now, even when you can't see it, even when you don't feel it, even when your life looks motionless on the surface. Trust that the background is where God builds the blessing long before He brings it to your doorstep. And know this with your whole heart, your breakthrough is coming because God has been preparing it all along, silently and intentionally behind the scenes of your life. There are seasons in life when everything feels slower than your expectations, when what you prayed for takes longer than your patience, and when the vision God gave you seems to be moving in the opposite direction. In those moments, it's easy to assume something is wrong, to believe you misheard God, or to think that delay means denial. But what feels like delay to you is often divine preparation to God. He knows what you're asking for, And he knows the version of you that is required to carry that blessing. The gap between the prayer and the promise is where heaven prepares you. It's where God refines you, strengthens you, stretches you, and matures you in ways you may not understand in the moment. Delay is not punishment, it is preparation. One of the greatest misconceptions believers have that God gives blessings fully assembled. But God doesn't send finished products. He sends opportunities that require strength, character, discipline, and wisdom to manage. You're praying for the what, but God is focusing on the who. You want the breakthrough, but he wants the foundation. You want the promise, but he wants the capacity. If God were to release some things too early, they wouldn't bless you, they would break you. So he uses delay as a training ground. He uses waiting to build the resilience you'll need. He uses interruptions to build trust. He uses stillness to grow sensitivity to his voice. He uses adversity to shape the kind of person who can thrive in the place you're asking him to take you. Sometimes you're praying for a level that your character isn't ready to handle yet. Maybe your patience is still fragile. Maybe your identity is too tied to the approval of others. Maybe your discipline is inconsistent. Maybe your confidence is unstable. Maybe your emotional endurance hasn't matured. And because God loves you, he refuses to elevate you into a space where the weight of the blessing would crush you. So he delays not to frustrate you, but to fortify you. Every delay carries a developmental purpose. Some blessings require deeper roots. Some breakthroughs require stronger shoulders. Some elevations require thicker skin. Some opportunities require sharper discernment. God sees what you cannot see, and he prepares you for what you do not know is coming. Think about the story of David. He was anointed king long before he sat on the throne. God had already chosen him, already marked him, already set him apart. But after the oil flowed, David didn't go straight to the palace. He went back to the pasture. He went back to tending sheep, back to obscurity, back to routine, back to quiet places. It looked like a delay, but it was preparation. God used the pasture to teach him humility, consistency, courage, and worship. God used the lions and bears to train him for Goliath. God used the lonely hills to cultivate the heart of a king before he ever wore the crown. David was chosen, but he wasn't ready. The delay didn't change the promise, it changed David. The same is true for you. Just because it's taken time doesn't mean God has changed his mind. Sometimes the season you're in is shaping the version of you that your future requires. You're being sharpened by experience, strengthened by trials, stretched by discomfort, and purified by pressure. You want things to speed up, but God is using the slowness to stretch your faith. You want doors to open, but God is using the closed ones to teach you obedience. You want answers, but God is using silence to build trust. You want promotion, but God is using the hidden season to humble you. Delay is a chiseling tool in the hands of a master. It doesn't feel good, but it builds something good. Preparation always precedes manifestation. You cannot step into a new season with old skill sets. You cannot enter a new level with a fragile spirit. You cannot handle new blessings with unresolved wounds. So God waits. He waits for the fruit of your growth. He waits for your heart to heal. He waits for your habits to change. He waits for your mind to renew. He waits until your maturity can sustain what your mouth prayed for. You are growing into your breakthrough, even if you don't realize it yet. And sometimes the delay has nothing to do with your readiness. It has everything to do with timing. The world around you must align with what God is releasing. The right people have to arrive. The wrong people have to exit. Circumstances must shift. Opportunities must ripen. External factors need to synchronize with God's schedule. You don't want a blessing that isn't in its appointed season. You don't want a relationship that isn't prepared. You don't want a door that leads to the wrong place. So God delays to protect you from premature entry. Waiting feels like a valley, but it's a classroom. Waiting feels like stillness, but it's surgery. Waiting feels like stagnation, but it's construction. And even while you're wrestling with the slowness, God is celebrating the growth you can't see. You're being refined in ways you'll appreciate later. You're being shaped into someone who will one day look back and thank God for not answering too soon. When you finally step into the blessing, you'll recognize why you needed the delay. You'll realize why God removed certain people, why He closed certain doors, why He stretched certain seasons, why He corrected certain attitudes, why He developed certain strengths. You'll see how everything He taught you in the waiting was required for the season you're stepping into. The version of you that prayed for it is not the version of you that will receive it. There are levels of destiny that require emotional stability so you don't crumble under pressure. There are seasons of influence that require humility so you don't grow arrogant. There are relationships that require healing so you don't bleed on people who didn't cut you. There are platforms that require character so you don't lose yourself in the spotlight. God delays because He sees the full picture. You only see the moment. He sees the outcome. You only see the desire. He sees the responsibility that comes with it. If you can trust Him when He is silent, you will be ready when He speaks. If you can praise Him while you're waiting, you will be mature when the blessing arrives. If you can remain faithful during the delay, you will be stable during the breakthrough. The delay is developing the spiritual stamina you'll need for the weight of your calling. You are not stuck. You are being shaped. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. You are not behind. You are being aligned. And hear this clearly: when God finishes preparing you, the breakthrough will not crawl into your life. It will burst in. Doors will open with ease. Opportunities will flow. Favor will surround you. Your spirit will recognize that the wait was necessary. The delay was divine. The preparation was purposeful. You will move into your blessing with a strength you didn't have before, a clarity you didn't walk in before, and a confidence you couldn't access before. So don't fear the delay. Don't curse the waiting room. Don't fight the silent season. You are not being denied. You are being developed. God is shaping you to match the magnitude of what you prayed for, because when He finally releases it, He wants it to bless you, not break you. And the delay is what ensures that when your breakthrough comes, you will be fully ready to receive it, handle it, protect it, and grow with it. There are moments when your life looks completely still, when nothing on the outside seems to be shifting, moving, or progressing. You wake up to the same routines, the same challenges, the same unanswered questions. You pray and feel like the heavens are quiet. You look around and wonder if anything is happening at all. But what looks motionless in the natural is often moving powerfully in the spirit. You are judging progress by sight, while God is producing progress in the unseen realm. The surface may appear still, but the depths are roaring with divine activity. Stillness in your environment is never stillness in God's purpose. He is always moving, always working, always orchestrating, just not always in ways you can detect with human eyes. Think about the ocean. On a calm day, the surface looks glassy, peaceful, motionless. But beneath that calm is a world of currents, movement, force, and life. Just because the top is still doesn't mean the depths are inactive. The same is true for your spiritual journey. You may feel like you're in a season where nothing is shifting, but that's only your vantage point. In the depths of your spirit, God is churning, stirring, aligning, breaking, building, healing, uprooting, and planting. And because the deepest work is often the quietest work, you may not recognize movement until it rises to the surface. The Spirit of God often moves in spaces where your feelings cannot follow. If your emotions were the measure of God's activity, you would miss 90% of what He is doing. Feelings fluctuate, circumstances shift, environments deceive, but the Spirit works consistently, intentionally, and invisibly. What looks like silence to you is strategy to God. What feels like a pause is preparation. What feels like stillness is spiritual activity beneath the surface. And some of the greatest breakthroughs you will ever experience are being formed in realms you cannot see. You must understand something. God often works underground before He manifests anything above ground. Seeds sprout roots before they ever show leaves. Foundations are poured before walls are constructed. Muscles strengthen beneath the skin before shape is visible. Spiritual growth works the same way. You feel the stretching, the pressure, the discomfort, the waiting, the uncertainty, but you don't always see the transformation that's happening underneath. God hides the work so that the enemy cannot interrupt it, and so that your impatience doesn't sabotage it. Just because you can't trace his steps doesn't mean he isn't walking through your situation. Sometimes God conceals progress because he's strengthening you in ways that would be weakened by visibility. If you saw everything he was doing, you might get distracted. If you saw the full picture, you might chase the blessing instead of the one preparing it. If you saw the spiritual battles being fought on your behalf, fear might overcome your faith. God covers the process so that he can uncover your potential at the right time. He is not hiding movement from you to frustrate you. He is hiding it to protect you. You may be crying because the surface looks the same, but heaven is rejoicing because the Spirit is moving deeply. And sometimes deep movement takes longer to show outward results because the roots must be established before the tree can stand. God is strengthening the foundation of your identity, building endurance in your character, deepening your trust, purifying your motives, healing your wounds, and removing the weight of old seasons so the new season can fit. These are movements you cannot see with natural eyes, but you can feel their echo in your spirit if you pay attention. There are prayers you prayed months ago that are now being answered under the surface. There are doors God has already opened in the spirit that you haven't walked through yet in the natural. There are people being prepared for you, mentors, partners, helpers, divine connections who don't even know your name yet, but are moving toward you because God whispered something in their spirit. There are opportunities forming, breakthroughs aligning, miracles assembling. You may not see them yet, but they are rising from the depths toward your life. When the Spirit moves deeply, he deals with the unseen enemies. First, the thoughts that sabotage you, the insecurities that chain you, the doubts that limit you, the wounds that weaken you, the patterns that hold you back. God is confronting things you didn't even know were blocking your breakthrough. He is breaking strongholds you didn't realize were controlling your reactions. He is dismantling generational patterns you thought were just part of you. He is overturning mindsets that were keeping you small. Deep movement is transformational movement. Sometimes your environment won't change until you change. God shifts the internal space before he shifts the external space. He breaks cycles in your thinking before he breaks cycles in your circumstances. He restores your heart before he restores your opportunities. He builds your faith before he builds your platform. What looks still is actually God focusing on the part of the battle that matters most. The inner world where destiny is either strengthened or sabotaged. Movement in the Spirit is often disguised as discomfort. That anxiety you're fighting may be God uprooting fear. That tension you feel may be God stretching your faith. That pressure may be God pushing you into maturity. That uneasiness may be the Holy Spirit nudging you toward a new season. Just because it's not visible doesn't mean it's not spiritual. The Spirit rarely moves in ways that feel convenient. He moves in ways that produce transformation. And hear this, the stillness you see is not stillness, it's stabilization. God is steadying your life so it can support the weight of what's coming. He's anchoring you because elevation requires stability. He's grounding you because greater levels require deeper roots. He's calming the surface because storms are shifting under the waterline. You think nothing is happening, but heaven is humming with activity. There will come a moment when everything God has been doing in the deep will rise to the surface. Suddenly things will shift. Suddenly opportunities will open. Suddenly clarity will come. Suddenly the right people will appear. Suddenly momentum will build. Suddenly what you thought was still will surge. And when it happens, you'll realize that God wasn't silent. He was strategic. He wasn't still. He was strengthening. He wasn't absent. He was active in ways you couldn't perceive. What looks still on the surface is moving deeply in the Spirit. Trust the depths even when the surface lies to you. Trust the unseen even when the visible discourages you. Trust the movement even when your emotions cannot detect it. God is working right now in the background, beneath the surface, within your spirit, setting up a breakthrough that will erupt in your life at the appointed time. The surface is still, but the Spirit is moving. And that movement is carrying you toward the breakthrough you've been praying for. When God finally reveals what he's been working on, it will not look like the small, simple answer you imagined. It will not resemble the limited version you prayed for when you were tired, discouraged, or desperate. God does not give you breakthrough according to your imagination. He gives it according to his intention. And his intention is always bigger, deeper, richer, and more transformative than anything your human mind can picture. You prayed from a place of need, but God responds from a place of abundance. You asked based on what you could see, but God answers based on what he already prepared behind the scenes. When the breakthrough comes, you will realize it didn't just meet your expectation, it exceeded it. God's blessings rarely arrive in the size of your request, they arrive in the size of his role as Father. That means he gives with generosity, wisdom, foresight, and purpose. Sometimes you pray for strength, and God gives you an opportunity that builds endurance. Sometimes you pray for direction, and God gives you clarity that transforms your entire path. Sometimes you pray for one door to open and God opens several. Sometimes you pray for healing in one area and God begins restoring areas you didn't even know were broken. When God moves, he doesn't just answer the prayer, he upgrades the life connected to the prayer. What you ask for is often based on your level of understanding, but what God releases is based on his knowledge of your destiny. You prayed from your present, but God answered from your future. He sees further than you, knows more than you, and understands the full picture when all you can see is one piece. That's why his blessings carry dimensions you didn't expect. He considers your purpose, your potential, your growth, and the people connected to your destiny. God gives in a way that blesses not only you, but everyone connected to your assignment. Many times we approach God asking for survival when he intends to bring overflow. We ask from a place shaped by past pain, past disappointments, and past limitations. We ask based on what we think is possible. But God is not bound by your past, your fears, or your logic. When he reveals what he has been preparing in the silence, he often shocks you with how precisely it fits your life, how beautifully it aligns with your growth, and how perfectly it arrives in timing you couldn't have orchestrated. Think of Joseph in the Bible. He prayed for freedom from prison. He didn't dare imagine becoming the second in command over Egypt. He didn't ask for a throne. He asked for release. But God took a request for freedom and turned it into a destiny. God didn't just answer his prayer. He elevated him beyond anything Joseph ever imagined. That is how God works. His answers do not simply fix your situation. They fulfill your purpose. Or consider Hannah. She prayed for a child with trembling hope, but God gave her Samuel, a prophet, a leader, a man with a destiny that shaped nations. She asked for a child, God gave her legacy. She asked for a son, God gave her impact. That is why God's blessings always exceed your prayers. They carry heaven's purpose. When God reveals what he has been quietly building in your life, it comes with a level of divine orchestration that makes you realize none of the delays were wasted, none of the tears were pointless, and none of the silent seasons were empty. Everything had intention. Everything had reason. Every difficult moment played a part in preparing you for what God was assembling in the background. God's best work doesn't show up small. His blessings don't tiptoe into your life. They arrive with weight. They arrive with clarity. They arrive with confirmation. And when they arrive, you will see why you had to wait, why certain people had to leave, why certain doors had to close, and why certain seasons had to stretch longer than you wanted. You cannot appreciate divine alignment until you experience divine fulfillment. Sometimes God makes you wait so he can multiply what he's giving. You asked for one opportunity, but God was preparing several. You asked for one connection, but God was connecting you to a group of people who will influence your destiny. You asked for one answer, but God was shaping an entire season of elevation. His blessings are layered. They build upon each other and carry long-term impact. God's silence is never the end. It's the setup. And the setup always leads to something greater than what your temporary frustration imagined. When he finally unveils his work, he does it in such a way that you can say, "This is the Lord's doing." And it is marvelous in our eyes because nothing about it feels random. Nothing about it feels accidental. Nothing about it feels normal. It feels orchestrated, purposeful, intentional, supernatural. Many times, The blessing God gives doesn't just resolve the current situation. It sets the stage for the next chapter of your life. You may have been praying for daily provision, but God was preparing you for generational blessing. You may have been praying for peace of mind, but God was preparing you for leadership that requires spiritual stability. You may have asked for a small breakthrough, but God was preparing a transformation. And the beautiful thing is this: when God gives you more than you asked for, He is not overwhelming you. He is equipping you. He gives in abundance because your calling requires abundance. He gives beyond your expectation because your influence requires strength. He gives bigger because your purpose requires bigger. God's blessings come when you're ready, even if you don't feel ready. They come when the environment is aligned, even if the environment still looks ordinary. They come when your heart has been softened, healed, stretched, and matured enough to handle what He is releasing. You don't always know you're ready until the blessing arrives, but God knows. When you finally step into what God has been preparing, you will realize the magnitude of His faithfulness. You will see that the wait was worth it. The tears watered the soil, the silence protected the promise, and the struggle strengthened you for the blessing. God exceeds expectations because His purpose for your life is greater than your vision for your life. So don't shrink your expectation to fit your situation. Don't lower your faith to match your feelings. When God reveals what He has been working on, it will surpass what you prayed for, exceed what you imagined, and elevate you beyond what you planned. Because God is not a God of small answers. He is a God of abundant fulfillment. And your breakthrough, when it comes, will prove it. When it's all said and done, this entire message points to one unshakable truth: God has never stopped working on your behalf, not for a second. Every silent season, every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every delay, every disappointment, every night you cried wondering if God still saw you, all of it has been part of a divine orchestration moving you toward a breakthrough bigger than you imagined. You were never stuck. You were being positioned. You were never forgotten. You were being developed. You were never denied. You were being prepared to carry what you once could only dream of. If you look back over your life, you'll see that the moments that felt the quietest were the moments God was preparing the loudest miracles. The times you thought nothing was happening were the times everything was shifting beneath the surface. Just because you didn't see movement didn't mean there wasn't momentum. Just because you didn't hear God didn't mean He wasn't speaking through circumstances, alignment, protection, and timing. God has been working in the background, adjusting people, moving obstacles, strengthening your character, stretching your faith, and building the capacity you would need for the promise He already planned to deliver. You may not have understood the process, but you will understand the purpose. You may not have liked the silence, but you will love the outcome, because when God finally reveals what He has been shaping in the shadows, it will make sense why He kept you hidden, why He closed certain doors, why He didn't let that relationship work, why He pulled you away from certain people, why He didn't allow that opportunity too early, why He protected you from things you prayed for but weren't ready to carry. Your tears were not wasted. Your waiting was not wasted. Your faithfulness in the dark was not wasted. Every season of silence was an incubation room where God was forming something powerful inside of you. Endurance, clarity, strength, spiritual sensitivity, maturity, and a deeper dependence on Him. He wasn't punishing you. He was preparing you. He wasn't delaying you. He was developing you. He wasn't quiet because He abandoned you. He was quiet because He was constructing something that required care, precision, and divine timing. And when it breaks forth, when the breakthrough finally hits your life, it won't be a small thing. It won't be something you could have done on your own. It won't be something you could have manipulated or forced. It will be the kind of blessing that makes you say, if God didn't do this, it would not have happened at all. It will be undeniable, unexplainable, unmistakable evidence that heaven intervened. It will be so custom-made, so specifically tailored to your journey that nobody else will be able to take credit for it. And when you testify, you won't say, I made it happen. You'll say, God moved silently, but he moved supernaturally. This is your reminder that waiting is not wasting. Silence is not absence. Preparation is not punishment. And God is not done with you, not even close. You are standing at the edge of something you prayed for, fought for, waited for, cried for, and almost gave up on. But you didn't quit. You didn't walk away. You didn't lose your faith. And because you held on, God is about to release what he's been shaping in the unseen places of your life. So lift your head, straighten your shoulders, strengthen your spirit. Your breakthrough is not coming someday. Your breakthrough is coming now. Heaven has already released what your heart has been asking for. You are stepping into a season where what was silent will become visible, what was hidden will be revealed, what was delayed will be delivered, and what was impossible will be manifested. Get ready, God is about to show you why he was so quiet. Because when he finally speaks, when he finally moves, when he finally unveils what he's prepared, it will shift your life, stretch your faith, and leave you saying, it was worth the wait.